I've been thinking a lot lately about why I don't think graphics matter as much as the AAA industry thinks they do. They've been pushing for highest fidelity and these crazy photorealistic graphics now for years, and it's creating these crazy long development cycles that can span literally an entire console generation. Not only is this approach not sustainable, it's starting to really sacrifice gameplay and player experience for just the pure photorealistic nature, or the attempt to get to that point. Development times are stretching from like 5 to 8 years for some of these games, and developers barely have time to master the tools necessary for the current console generation before they're already left behind. This relentless pursuit of realism often leads to games that look stunning, but lack the depth and engagement that players crave. Games are supposed to be fun, interactive experiences, but when so much is focused on making them look like a blockbuster movie, the core elements that make them enjoyable can often fall by the wayside. On the other hand, stylized games with incredible art direction are much more enjoyable in my opinion. Take Elden Ring for example. If you really look closely at the game, really look closely, you'll notice it can look a bit rough and dated from a technical standpoint. However, its art direction and design are second to none. It is one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. Critics have praised it, and it's a perfect example of how art direction can triumph over pure graphical fidelity. Elden Ring doesn't rely on photorealism. Instead, it uses unique art styles to create an immersive and captivating worlds that players can lose themselves in. And so I've been thinking about just games that prove this point so well. Things like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, Hollow Knight, they're great examples. It's not photorealistic, and Tears of the Kingdom looks the way it does because of the limitations of the system that it's on. They pair those limitations with a very powerful and very intentional art style, and it makes really, in my opinion, a gorgeous game that's very, very memorable. Same thing, Hollow Knight, the dark atmospheric vibes, it draws me in a way that photorealistic or games more leaning in the realism side of things just cannot. Cuphead's another great example where they use the art style in tandem with the gameplay, and it creates this weird harmony that just works. Those hand-drawn animations, the fluid character movements, and the insane difficulty make this game not just one that's fun to play, but one that's just so fun to watch. Ori and the Blind Forest or Will of the Wisps, another great example. It's detailed, it's got painterly visuals, it's evocative and beautiful. And the game's art styles just perfectly complement their emotional narratives and tight platforming gameplay. It's visually striking and it's super engaging. You can even go back in time. I've been playing my PlayStation 2 again, and games like Okami or Shadow of the Colossus have aged beautifully because of their art styles. They were ahead of their time, but they also matched the limitations that the developers had with that system and made a very intentional choice to maximize something unique and stylized. It's no wonder why both of these games have remasters and still look great on newer systems. And these games really prove art direction. Good art direction can ensure longevity and keep a game's visual appeal even as technology advances. It's not that photorealism is bad. Sometimes it's done extremely well, but it comes at a cost, not just that long development time, but technology is advancing so quickly. What looks great today may look awful in 5 to 10 years. Sometimes you can go back 15 years and look at a movie that you felt like had incredible visuals or CG, and now it looks very dated. It's not that it's bad, it just our eyes have changed, our expectations have shifted, the technology has grown. And so a strong art style can really help not just a game, but a movie really remain timeless and keep people coming back for years. I love Jurassic Park. It's such a great film, and so much of that movie's visuals I still feel like holds up. The mix of practical and VFX was handled so well, and it had a great art direction. A lot of developers are recognizing this as well, and returning to the graphical art styles of old to help limit their scope and focus on improving player experience. The PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 aesthetics are making a comeback, especially in the indie scene, and it's working. The gameplay is what matters the most. If developers can create a polished, incredible experience without having to obsess over realism, the player benefits in the end. Games like Octopath Traveler and Shovel Knight have shown that there's huge appetite for games that embrace retro styles while offering modern gameplay mechanics. I want to take a closer look at some modern indie games that emphasize legacy art and gameplay aesthetics for an improved player experience. The first is The Big Catch, which right now you can wishlist on Steam, but they have a small demo, like a prologue to the game that you can download for free. And this is a game that embraces that retro PlayStation 1 aesthetic. It blends this sort of, it's not really pixel art, it's more that PS1 vibe with modern gameplay mechanics. It's a fishing adventure game. It's nostalgic, it's fresh. It reminds us of simpler times when gameplay was pretty much the sole focus. It doesn't try and wow you with like crazy realistic visuals. Instead, it draws you in with this charm, this cool, unique art style. And the gameplay is all of the stuff we enjoyed when we were younger, with the frustrations removed, the hard edges gone, all the lessons of design learned over the last 2 decades put in a modern feel. And seriously, it's amazing. If you have a PC, you need to try this thing out. Another great example, which was a recommendation from Toastbomb, Pseudo Regalia. It's a platformer that draws heavy inspiration from the PlayStation 1 era. I've been playing it, it's so cool. It's a love letter to the past. You've got the blocky characters and the environments that evoke a strong sense of nostalgia, but the gameplay is tight, the exploration is rewarding, and it proves you don't need cutting-edge graphics to make a really fun, great experience. Plus, you look at something like this right now and it stands out immediately. You understand that it's got this retro vibe, but you also know it's got modern design sensibilities. It's kind of this great new hybrid, merging the best of old and new at the same time. Compound Fracture isn't out yet, but I cannot wait. It's a survival horror game with a PlayStation 1 aesthetic. Think of like Dino Crisis, but in first person. It kind of captures the essence of classic horror games with its low poly graphics that add to the atmosphere, making it a haunting experience without relying on crazy high fidelity visuals. In fact, high fidelity visuals not only would delay the release of a game like this, but sometimes they're not as scary. These old PS1 spooky games are seriously unnerving because so much of those days were us imagining and filling in the gaps, what the system couldn't render, what was beyond the draw distance. Our minds would build in our head. The game leverages these minimalist graphics to create a tense and eerie environment, much like the original Resident Evil or Silent Hill games. It's that rough, grainy texture, those simple character models. It gives you this sense of unease and dread. And it really proves less is more when creating a compelling horror experience. A Hat in Time really stands out. It's not ultra retro when it comes to its graphic design, but it really stands out with that cool cartoonish art style. And in fact, the game's just a throwback to the old collectathon platformers of the late 90s and early 2000s. It's got bright, colorful environments, whimsical character designs, and it was a very successful game. It was able to evoke nostalgia while providing a polished, modern gameplay experience. I was talking with Epos Fox about this, as he regularly plays retro games and loves that scene, and he's mentioned just how cool it would be if we saw some of those retro aesthetics merged with modern game design sensibilities, like the improvement of those things. And that scene is just growing and growing. You know, I've been playing my PlayStation 2 again, and I'm blown away by how fun some of the games are, even with the major technical limitations that platform has now in contrast with modern systems. These games were graphically impressive at the time. It's important to remember that. But the developers were rarely aiming for photorealism that just couldn't really happen on those systems. They worked within the system's technical limitations to create something gorgeous and stylized. And in a lot of ways, playing PlayStation 2 has reminded me this older aesthetic is so comfortable, so cozy, so special and nostalgic. It's honestly better in so many ways. Like I said, what the game couldn't display in the PlayStation 1 or PS2 era, our minds filled in the rest. Our imagination led us to build something greater. Now, one thing's really important to recognize here. Photorealism does not equal bad. Games like Red Dead Redemption 2 are unbelievably gorgeous. I'm playing through Phantom Liberty right now. They are amazing, and the visuals do add to the gameplay experience. So often these videos just turn into modern games bad, old games good. It's not the truth. That's not the point that I'm trying to make. I truly believe player experience is what matters the most. And however the developer chooses to accomplish that, to put the gameplay first and improve player experience, that really is what is most important and memorable to the player. And more, these AAA publishers are leaving player experience in the dust, prioritizing visuals for the marketing, for the big reveal at the Game Awards. I want studios to be able to push experiences out in shorter time frames. This whole 7-8 year long game design pipeline, so much of it is spent on the visual side of it. And it's becoming very clear that's unsustainable. You botch that release that your team has worked on for 5 years, that console generation's over. You're already having to move on to the next tool set. You never were able to get your feet under you to learn the tools to make a great game because you were too busy trying to figure out how to get this thing to run on a system and look as good as the publisher expectations are. While the industry continues to obsess over these photorealistic graphics, I believe it's essential to remember that gameplay and art direction are what make a game truly memorable. Stylized games can have a timeless charm. Graphics are not everything. The resurgence of retro aesthetics and the popularity of emulation these days show you there's a thriving market for games that prioritize creative design and engaging mechanics over just the sheer graphical fidelity. I would love to hear what some of your favorite games are from an art direction standpoint. Let me know about that down in the comments below. I want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate you all, and I'll see you again in the next one.